Joining me now is Jared Polis. He's the Democratic governor of Colorado. It is a state that has seen its share of gun violence in every aspect of daily life. Just consider this list of Colorado's deadliest mass shootings. It reminds Americans that no place is safe, whether it's at school, Columbine, whether it's at the movies in Aurora, whether it's simply grocery shopping in Boulder, or whether it's unwinding at a nightclub in Colorado Springs. Governor Polis, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning, Chuck.
How do you avoid a wash, rinse, repeat cycle here? That we've done this, you and I've had this conversation before. I've done a version of this show before. How do we stop it?
Yeah, sadly, you've had to do too many versions of this show, Chuck. And first and foremost, our heart goes out to the 5 lives that were lost at the Club Q shooting. I've spent much of the last week talking to the victims, the survivors, thanking the heroes who acted boldly. The losses could have been worse. I think what you really need to do if you're serious about reducing these kinds of gun violence events and mass violence events is try to take the best ideas from all sides that work. Of course, it's about mental health. Of course, it's about gun policy. Of course, it's about anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. It's about all these things. We need to, as a society, as political leaders, walk and chew gum at the same time. We need to look at all the evidence and the facts and try to make decisions that lead to a safer country.
You, one of the responses you did after, I want to get my events right, I believe it was after the Boulder shooting, that's when the state of Colorado implemented a red flag law. I think you believe here, if there were better understanding of how the red flag law worked, perhaps this shooter is prevented from having a gun at the time he wants to do his massacre. Is that your sense?
This looks like this would have been a good instance for the use of Colorado's new red flag law, which has been used several hundred times, but could have been used even more to prevent these kinds of tragic events, or more often to prevent self-harm or suicide. What this is, Chuck, is and a number of states have it, it's a legal way to temporarily remove access to someone's guns while they're experiencing a mental health crisis. And that can be reported usually by a parent, a loved one, or by a sheriff department or law enforcement. And we need to make sure that that's more available and easier when somebody's an immediate threat, and there were signs in this troubled person's past that he would have been a threat. It could have instigated our red flag law to remove him from having custody over his weapons while he's experiencing that mental health crisis. So those kinds of tools are data-driven. They work. And they can reduce suicide, and from time to time, they can even reduce the likelihood of these kinds of horrific events.
You're asking, I guess the question I have with the red flag laws, is this the best law you can come up with because of the current circumstances we live in politically, or is this a good idea no matter the current state of our politics? And I say this because you really are asking people to do something that isn't comfortable, which is insert themselves into somebody else's life.
No, it's never comfortable, and that's why you want to look at the ability of law enforcement, potentially expanding that to DAs to be able to do this too. But it's certainly better than the alternative of doing nothing or having no tools and watching somebody at risk, sadly, take their own life or the life of others. So yes, it's called an extreme risk protection order. It works. Here's what it is, Chuck. You know, when somebody's having a mental health crisis and is an immediate danger to themselves or others, they can be temporarily detained, 24-hour holds or 72-hour holds. But then the minute that they're released, the minute they're not an immediate danger to themselves or others, they could still be a danger to themselves or others, just not that immediate danger to themselves or others. This triggers another way to make sure that they don't have access to something that could turn that feeling they have towards self-destruction or a mental health issue into a tragedy.
Where would you like to go? With the next round of laws, do you think this has to come from the federal level? Is there anything more the state of Colorado can do in your mind?
Well, we're certainly going to take a hard look at why red flag law wasn't used in this case, in the case of the King Soopers shooter, what can be used to better publicize, make available, add different parties to make sure that it's used when it should be used. But of course, the answer needs to be national as well. We have universal background checks in Colorado. Some of our neighboring states don't even have background checks. So somebody who's a convicted felon in Colorado, unable to legally purchase a gun, can drive an hour or two, buy a weapon, buy 5 weapons at an open-air gun show and return to our state. So yes, it should be looked at federally, but that doesn't mean to the exclusion of mental health issues, of looking at the rhetoric that's used in the political realm and how that can instigate these acts of violence. All of these are very valid issues that we really need to really look at our self-exam as a society to try to remedy.
I was just going to say, when you look at the Club Q shooting, you can't help but say, boy, how much of this mental health problem with this person was triggered by hateful rhetoric online, and how much of this is easy access to a weapon while you're also in a mentally unstable place.
Yeah, and I just encourage policymakers to look at all of the above. And the particulars of this case will emerge. We'll find what that balance was. But a different case, the balance could be different, right? I mean, we know that when people are saying incendiary things, somebody who's not well balanced can hear those things and think that what they're doing is heroic when it's actually horrific crime that kills innocent people. So we really need to be mindful of the rhetoric, try to heal people, bring people together, never cast one group of Americans against another.
Would you pursue what President Biden wants to pursue, which is an assault weapons ban, essentially that would put the AR-15, I guess, out of individual circulation?
Well, look, in this case, I think he had 2 guns. I think it's been reported one of the weapons was a ghost weapon, might not have even had a serial number, been purchased legally. In Colorado, we have a magazine limit, 15 bullets, no more than 15 bullets in a magazine. So effectively, it reduces the ability of high-powered weapons to do harm. So look, I think all of these things, including the red flag law and expanding its use, should really be looked at. But again, it's not just about gun policy. Yes, that should be on the table to discuss in a thoughtful, rational way. But we also need to talk about mental health, and we need to talk about the divisive rhetoric that even some people who aspire to positions of leadership in our country unfortunately use almost every day.
You didn't quite say, would you support, if you were still in Congress, would you vote for an assault weapons ban?
I was generally supportive of national efforts towards closing the guns to a loophole, towards having a conversation about which type of weapons were, as you know, fully automatic weapons already effectively banned. We shouldn't say banned. There's a way to get a federal license to operate one. But if you're talking about a similar process where you need an additional license or background check for some of the most high-powered weapons, I did support that as a member of Congress.
Gotcha.
That's the kind of thing that we should be looking at nationally, but not to the exclusion of all these other things that we're talking about, which can be important as well.
So you believe there should be classifications of certain types of weapons. Governor Jared Polis, Democrat from Colorado, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your perspective with us. Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.